Alright, so the deck I've been playing since launch is this treasure map forest. I have a bunch of footage backed up, so if I say something and I think I have a relevant clip, they'll show up first. But anyways, the deck is based around this card called Treasure Map. It has the ability to give you Forest of Dreams, Arthurian Light, Enchanted Library, Phoenix Roost, Grave Desecration, the Flower Bed, or a Sculpture. Of the many games I've played with this deck, I have never retrieved the Forest of Dreams, but I have retrieved every other card at least one time. So, Forest of Dreams is the countdown amulet that stops attacks. Arthurian Light summons 1/1s for the rest of the game. Essentially, every turn you summon a Quick Blader, and it gives the fairies you play Storm, so it has synergy with fairies. The reason Map is in this deck is because most of the cards that Map can pull is good for it. Has synergy with this deck, so I figured that's why it's map control. So Forest of Dreams is good because it's stall, and stall helps you get to Bahamut. Arthurian Light's good because it's infinite Quick Bladers, and your fairies have Storm now instead of it's just nice. Enchanted Library draws spells, including more maps. The Phoenix Roost is the most tricky one to use. Often this gets you killed, but hey, what do you know? That's just how Phoenix Roost works. Sometimes you can get cheeky wins with this card, because people like overcommit and stuff, but overall, Phoenix Roost is probably the worst pull you can get. Grave Desecration summons infinite zombies, so if Grave Desecration activates once, it's really good. Activates more than once, it's insane. So Grave Desecration also fits very nicely in the deck, because the deck summons a lot of stuff. Desecration just mops the floor with everything. Left Flower Bed does 1 damage. It's reach is reach. With all the jungle wardens and stuff going on, if you hit face instead of do what I do in this clip here, which is trade away, I have 17 damage worth of burst in my hand with the Blood Fed. I should have just gone face, but you can see how a card like this might be very beneficial if you play correctly. Unfortunately, I did not in this case. Pegasus Sculpture heals. This is actually better than it looks, and I know that sounds weird because it's Pegasus Sculpture, but Pegasus Sculpture often finds a time to heal at least you for 4, and sometimes it heals followers as well. Usually around the evolution turns, you can manipulate so you get this minor healing. Minor healing usually doesn't help, but sometimes it does, and when it does, Pegasus Sculpture shines. So those are the 7 cards you get off of the map. Now there is no card draw in this deck, aside from Fina, so the deck relies on drawing the cards each turn, which means that it has to be top-loaded. So the deck can have moments where you mulligan into nothing but high-cost cards and lose the game because of that, and that's just natural order of the deck, because the deck has to be backloaded. Because if the deck wasn't backloaded, you wouldn't be... if the deck wasn't backloaded, you'd be out of cards, and in a control deck, you don't want to be out of cards. And the main idea with being so backloaded is that your cards, on average, will trade for more of the enemy's cards than your own, so it's okay to draw only your 1 card per turn. Speaking of backend, let's go ahead and discuss kind of each one at length. Bahamut is a board wipe. Bahamut is a win condition as well, because he's a big as fuck minion, and if he ever gets the opportunity to hit the opponent in the face, well, you know, that kind of kills them. So Bahamut is the all-star. You get to 10 mana, you play Bahamut, you kind of win the game. Unless it's a control matchup where you have to like trade Bahamuts for Bahamuts, or maybe Dragon has like Zeus's and stuff. But ideally, Bahamut is the game ender, and if you reach 10 play points, you play Bahamut, you've gotten to the point where you just win. Cassio is the pseudo board clear of the deck. Usually, there are actually times where she only does 4 or 6 damage because this card can't draw cards. It has to generate the fairies through it has to generate cards to keep the hand size up. So Cassio's effect sometimes doesn't get that high, but even if it's low, a 6 play point 3/3 deal 4 random damage can be pretty playable. So that's why Cassio's in the deck regardless. 2 of, because, as I said, unreliable, but it is a board clear nonetheless, and you will find her doing her job very well. In older renditions of the deck, of this type of controlled forest deck, before Cassio existed, I would run Elf Tracker for the same reason, just because she did 2 random pings. But that was like Darkness Evolved, that's like more than a year ago, so that's just a heads up. Erin is the powerhouse healer. She's the only healer aside from Pegasus Sculptures that you can get, so she's necessary. She also got Ward, and she also has just great enhance. Because this deck has several good and evolve effects, sometimes you can kind of be cheeky and use the evolution points very, very strangely. Here in this clip, I was able to get a combo off with Rain and Aaron, and was able to just wipe the board clean very nicely, very cleanly, and that's kind of an example when this enhance effect is kind of crazy. Botanist is a board buffer. This is actually better than it looks, and one of the reasons Arya is so good is because you can lead her into Botanist. It could be argued that maybe Elf Song is better, but I think Magna Botanist, because this deck has to be so backloaded, is better than Elf Song, and especially because there's not a way, like, you can't really build the board. I mean, you kind of can, but building a board and then buffing it with Elf Song is a lot less impactful than just building a board and then buffing it with Botanist. Botanist herself being a 6/6 after she buffs herself actually makes her fairly overstated, and it's a lot of stats if you get her effect. And usually, like, you can get this effect turn 6, turn 7, and even if it's not until turn 10 till you get the Botanist effect, she can really pull through. Jungle Warden is Reach. If used correctly, it will kill the opponent. It's 10 mana, do 8 damage, and often that's pointed at face because the deck needs more finishers than just Bahamut. So this is the secondary win condition, I guess you can say. No triple Warden, because you don't really want Wardens in your hand as much as you want like things like Fina and Botanist in your hand. But Warden is another reliable win con. Fina fetches 0 mana Goblin Mages. 0 mana cards are very important in this deck for activating Botanist and for activating Rain. So, in addition, the Goblin Mage you play has a chance to give you the Rain. She also has the chance to give you Crystallia Lily in this deck, and it's the reason why there isn't any Water Fairies in the deck, is because I want to fish specifically Lily and Rain with this card. Fetching only the strongest of cards, and it also means you don't draw Lily or Rain later when they might become a little bit less useful. So, because she's a 5-drop, she curves into Lily as well, which is very nice. Arya gives you 0 mana Fairy Wisps. These 0 mana cards are very useful for taking the board back, and also for comboing unfairly, usually with either Ariana or the Botanist herself. Her main goal is mostly to give you 0 mana stuff so that you can get these combos to go. Otherwise, I wouldn't be afraid of just playing the Fairy Wisps just whenever. When you just need the board presence, that usually works too. Ariana has synergy with Arya. In the early game, if your opponent just doesn't trade for some reason, Ariana gets you free, essentially free removal, and having more removal is good. Sometimes you're forced to play her without getting that cost reduction, and without the cost reduction, Ivy Spellbomb is kind of lackluster, but sometimes it's what you gotta do to survive, and Ivy Spellbomb isn't god-awful if you have to pay full price for it either. Lilac is hard removal. Oftentimes you'll actually play her on turn 3 or 4. I think saving Lilacs can be a mistake that players will often make, but just play Lilac on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, turn 8. Lilac is very useful for making the enemy make mistakes, and it's very easy for people to play incorrectly around Lilac, especially since this deck doesn't do what other Forestcraft decks do, so people don't understand how to play around her. Dark Elf Far is a fairy generator in the deck alongside the Fire Sprite Grove. What Dark Elf Far does is she has a target on her head that says kill me or I get value. In a control deck, generating these fairies is actually very important, because if you want to starve your opponent of their resources, which is one of your win conditions, then Dark Elf Far generating a bunch of fairies is one such way of getting more resources than your opponent can deal with. Because Dark Elf Far generates these fairies with at no sacrifice to her own stats, she can be really good, and Far often also has synergy with Rain giving her Rush, and amongst other things just is very useful. The fairies generated by Far are often more useful than you think. Just having 1 mana 1/1s can be annoying for the opponent, and it helps you it's kind of like a way to have pings without actually having pings. Far is very useful for generating her, and she keeps the cost of this deck down. Singleton Sylvan Justice, just for the lulz, I guess. I wanted to do 2 Sylvan Justice, but I figured most of the other cards were more valuable than it, so we only have 1 Sylvan Justice. Often enough, Sylvan Justice just doesn't see use, and it's not impactful enough to be useful, but Sylvan Justice can still, of course, be useful and for comboing and such, and that's about when Sylvan Justice is used, is like to combo with Rain. I don't have any footage of me comboing Sylvan Justice with anything. I'm usually just using it as a spot removal card, and that's fine. Rain herself is ridiculous. We may have already shown a few clips of Rain doing her thing, but the deal with Rain is that she's unfair, and unfair cards are unfair for reasons, and Rain is unfair in that she gains Rush, she gives something the ability to be immune to damage and Rush at the same time. It allows you to be very, very strategic. Playing with Rain is probably like, it gives the Forestcraft flavor, now that Roach is gone, to play combos with cards that are ridiculous like Rain. Admittedly, there are often times where a card like Elf Metallurgist would probably be better, or Insect Lord, but I think Rain is the perfect middle ground between targeted 2 damage and like she has like a targeted 2 damage like Elf Metallurgist, and she also has the kind of just the burst, and she does work. Rain does work. Lily is the only hard removal in the deck. She can be fetched by the Goblin Mage. Crystallia Lily is mostly used to keep Dragoncraft in check, because you need answers to 13/13s, and Crystallia Lily happens to be an answer to 13/13s. Lily's job as an answer to big things is mostly the most important facet of her. And she can also be used to like remove wards out of the way for lethal, fancy stuff like that. So I wouldn't like ignore Lily. She does her job, and her flexibility as both the 2-drop and as hard removal is very, very useful. Firesprite Grove is because Fairy Circle is gone. Firesprite Grove gives you fairies. This helps keep your hand size high for Cassio, and the random ping off of Firesprite usually doesn't do anything, but sometimes you need it, and sometimes it helps. But mostly this is just being used to generate fairies, and then you play the fairies later to combo and stuff. So it's just combo fuel. Sometimes you play the Firesprite Grove as a combo piece, though I don't have footage of that. But most of the time you just use the fairies it generates as the combo piece. It's very nice. Treasure Map is the other star of this deck. It can generate a card that just wins the game. Most notably, the card you want when you play Treasure Map is Enchanted Library, Grave Desecration, or Forest of Dreams. Unfortunately, I haven't gone Forest of Dreams yet. The OK results are Arthurian Light, Pegasus Sculpture, and Bloodfed Flowerbed. Those each have their own applications for either reach or for that situational healing, which can turn out being useful. Okay, the ability to give Fairy Storm is very powerful later in the game, so I don't have any footage of Arthurian Light just this second, but maybe it's just something to keep in mind when you're playing a deck with Treasure Map in it. The deck is seriously designed around this card. There's going to be a few games after this with their full length, and I will drag the video's length out, but I hope you understand what this deck is trying to do. I think this deck is a lot of fun. I don't think this deck is 100% competitive, but I do like the idea of a deck like this one. It's the kind of deck that makes me excited as a Johnny, a deck that is based around making Treasure Map work, because like you look at Treasure Map and you think the card's god-awful, but you build the deck around the card, and Treasure Map can be pretty good.
Time for me to prove myself!
This one's for my family.
The forest abandoned me.
Hear the dragons roar! Hear the dragons roar! You follow
The
behind!
forest abandoned me.
Hey, let's play!
Hear the dragons roar!
Better than in the cradle.
Be gone!
Fear the dragon's power!
Better than in the cradle.
One great blast of magic! You're done for! Weary foe gone in one blow!
You follow behind!
It won't be long now.
A dance to make the world blue. Oh, you got me.
With this ivy and this elixir, see you again next week.
Ow! All must come to an end. This song's for you. Bluest water. You're an intruder. It won't be long now. Get out of my sight. All must come to an end. Fighting is so crude. He's still no match for Mr. Dragon. Stop! Ow! Beautiful, powerful, and cute to boot. This ends here. I'll blow you away. Such pain. Fighting is so cruel. Running away is okay. Come on! Ow! Ooh, sparkly stuff. Gimme! You're an intruder. What bunch of slobs! You're done for! Is this why I have no friends? Such pain. Could have done worse. Did you like it? Stop! Ha! You suck! Ow! Still room for improvement. It's freezing!
With this ivy and this elixir, fighting is so sorrowful.
Time to say goodbye.
I will play a song of sorrow. See you again next week. Sorrow is sounding.
I am the Father, the God of all.
You're an intruder. Fighting is so cruel.
Fighting is so sorrowful.
Oh, come on! Stop! Such pain.
Couldn't swing it.
Hey, let's sway! Hey, let's sway! Hey, let's sway! Hey, let's sway!
Need a little pick-me-up?
My tempest shall judge you.
Beautiful, powerful, and cute to boot. It won't be long now. you away. Ooh, sparkly stuff. Gimme!
Ow!
What a bunch of slobs.
Wrong formula.
You're a solid fighter.